Victoria Hale controlled the most powerful boardrooms in Manhattan, but she couldn't control her breath when trapped in her private elevator between floors 41 and 42. In the crimson glow of emergency lights, Tech's coldest CEO panicked like a child. Then a voice crackled through the intercom. "Steady. 4 counts in. Hold 4. Out 4. Daniel Brooks, head of building maintenance, saved her from that elevator that day. But he didn't know that weeks later, she would stand in the middle of an elegant charity gala, trembling as she spoke before hundreds. "I don't have a husband. Could you go on a date with me tonight?" The alarm sounded at exactly 5:47 a.m., 3 minutes before sunrise. Victoria Hale opened her eyes to white ceiling, white walls, white sheets stretched military tight across her king bed. The penthouse on Park Avenue held no photographs, no plants, no evidence that a human being actually lived within its chrome and glass boundaries. She rose and moved through her morning sequence with the precision of someone who had eliminated every unnecessary decision. Black coffee, no sugar. Treadmill, 6 miles, 42 minutes. Shower, 7 minutes. Charcoal suit, white blouse, minimal jewelry. By 6:30, she was reviewing acquisition reports while her driver navigated morning traffic toward the Hale Tech Global Tower. At 32, Victoria had built her software security company from a college dorm project into a $3 billion empire. Forbes called her the frozen empress of tech. Wall Street Journal noted she'd never missed a quarterly earnings call, never been photographed at a social event, never shown emotion in a negotiation. Her executive assistant, Maya, kept a calendar that horrified efficiency consultants back-to-back meetings from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., blocked in 15-minute increments, color-coded by strategic priority. Victoria preferred it that way. Structure meant control. Control meant safety. She had no close friends, no family she spoke with regularly. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 19, leaving her with a trust fund and a profound understanding that attachment created vulnerability. Better to be alone than to need someone who could disappear. The car pulled up to Hale Tech Tower, a 50-story blade of steel and reflective glass that dominated the midtown skyline. Victoria stepped out, nodded to the security guard whose name she'd never learned, and walked to her private elevator, the one that went directly from the parking garage to the executive floor without stops. She swiped her biometric key. The doors whispered shut. Another controlled ascent into another controlled day. Victoria didn't notice the maintenance crew working on the electrical system 3 floors below. Didn't see the warning signs posted about intermittent power fluctuations. Didn't hear the anxious radio chatter between the building manager and the city inspector. She just felt the elevator shudder at floor 41, lurch violently, then stop with a metallic shriek that vibrated through her bones. The lights died instantly. Emergency LEDs flickered on, bathing the small space in pulsing red light that made Victoria's shadow dance across the steel walls like something trapped and desperate. She pressed the emergency button. Nothing. Pressed it again, harder. Silence. The walls seemed to move inward. Victoria's breath came faster, shallower. Her vision tunneled. She'd spent 2 decades building systems and protocols precisely to avoid situations where she wasn't in control, and now she was locked in a metal box suspended 40 stories above concrete, entirely dependent on mechanisms she couldn't see or influence. Her hands trembled. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool air. The elevator creaked, and Victoria's mind supplied vivid images of cables snapping, of freefall, of the catastrophic impact. The intercom crackled. "Miss Hale?" A male voice, calm and unhurried. "My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm the head of building maintenance. Can you hear me?" Victoria tried to respond, but her throat had closed. She managed a choking sound. "Okay," Daniel said. "I'm going to talk you through something. Don't worry about responding yet. Just listen to my voice. We're going to breathe together. Ready? Breathe in through your nose for 4 counts. 1, 2. Victoria couldn't follow. Her chest was too tight. That's okay, Daniel continued, as if he could see her struggle. Let's try again. Just focus on my counting. Nothing else exists right now except these numbers. In 4-4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out for 4. His voice was steady, warm, relentless. He kept counting, kept breathing with her, until Victoria's panicked gasps gradually synchronized with his rhythm. 4 in. Hold. 4 out. Good, Daniel said. That's really good. You're doing great. Now, I want you to know exactly what's happening. No surprises, okay? The elevator stopped because of a power fluctuation in the building's main system. It's not a mechanical failure. The safety brakes engaged exactly as designed. You're completely secure. The car is locked in place and cannot fall. Victoria's hands were still shaking, but the suffocating pressure in her chest had eased slightly. We have a team working on restoring power to your car right now, Daniel continued. But they need to do it carefully to avoid any electrical surge. That's going to take about 20 minutes. I'm going to stay on this line with you the entire time. You won't be alone for 1 second. Is that okay? Yes. Victoria's voice emerged as a whisper. Perfect. So here's what I'm thinking. 20 minutes is a long time to just sit in the dark counting breaths, right? How about you tell me something? Anything. What did you have for breakfast this morning? Black coffee, Victoria said. That's all. Really? No food? I don't eat breakfast. Huh. That explains why you're so scary in morning meetings. Low blood sugar? There was a smile in his voice, and impossibly, Victoria felt her mouth twitch. Daniel kept her talking. He asked about her college major, her first job, whether she preferred dogs or cats. Casual questions that required simple answers, that kept her mind engaged with something other than the red emergency lights and creaking metal. Can I ask you something personal? Daniel said after they'd been talking for 15 minutes. Okay, you mentioned you don't like small spaces. Has that always been true? Victoria hesitated. She never talked about this. But something about the darkness, the disembodied voice, the fact that he couldn't see her face made honesty feel possible. I was 9, she said quietly, playing hide and seek at a friend's house. I hid in a cedar chest in the attic. The lid fell shut and the latch caught. I was in there for 3 hours before they found me. 3 hours? Daniel repeated softly. That must have been terrifying. I learned not to put myself in situations I couldn't control. And yet, you got into an elevator this morning. That's different. Elevators are necessary, predictable, until they're not. Fair point, Daniel acknowledged. The intercom crackled with a burst of static, then cleared. Okay, Miss Hale, power is coming back online in about 30 seconds. The doors are going to open to floor 41. I'll be standing right there. Sound good? The elevator hummed. Lights flickered on, harsh and white after the red emergency glow. Victoria blinked against the brightness as the doors slid open with a soft chime, as if nothing unusual had happened. A man stood in the hallway. Tall, maybe 35, wearing navy maintenance coveralls with Brooks embroidered over the pocket. Dark hair, steady brown eyes. A face that looked like it smiled easily but wasn't smiling now, just watching her with quiet concern. Victoria Hale, he said, extending a hand. I'm Daniel Brooks. It's good to finally see you in person. Victoria stepped out of the elevator on legs that felt uncertain. She took his hand, calloused, warm, solid, and held it perhaps a moment longer than necessary. Thank you, she said, for staying. Of course I stayed, Daniel said simply, as if there had never been any question. 3 weeks later, Victoria stood at a podium in the Plaza Hotel ballroom, facing 400 people in evening wear who'd paid $5,000 per plate to attend the Manhattan Tech Leaders Charity Gala. The teleprompter displayed her prepared speech about innovation and social responsibility, the same polished remarks her communications team had been refining for weeks. She looked at the first line. Tonight, we celebrate not what we've built, but what we can build together. Corporate, meaningless, safe, Victoria gripped the sides of the podium and made a decision that would have horrified her board of directors. "I'm not going to read this speech," she said. The room went silent. The communications director in the wings made a strangled sound. Victoria took a breath, 4 counts in, hold 4, out 4, and continued. 3 weeks ago, I had a panic attack. A full, gasping, can't-breathe panic attack in my private elevator when it lost power between floors. I've spent my entire adult life building systems to avoid exactly that kind of loss of control. I've built walls, routines, a life that looks very successful from the outside, but feels like living in a steel box. She could see people leaning forward now, phones lowering, the polite charity gala masks sliding away. A man named Daniel Brooks talked me through that panic attack. He's head of maintenance at my building. He stayed on the intercom for 22 minutes, breathing with me, keeping me grounded, making sure I knew I wasn't alone. And when the doors finally opened, he was standing there. He'd kept his promise. He stayed. Victoria's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. That got me thinking about the steel boxes we all live in. The careful distance we keep from genuine connection. The way we've optimized ourselves into isolation and called it success. So here's what I'm committing to. Starting tomorrow, HailTech will be donating 10% of our quarterly profits to organizations that address mental health and social isolation. And I'll be volunteering 20 hours a month with those same organizations, not writing checks from a distance, actually showing up. The applause started slowly, then built into something genuine and sustained. Victoria saw surprise on faces, calculation on others, but also recognition, the same realization she'd had in that elevator. We're all pretending we don't need each other. As she left the stage, her phone exploded with messages. Her PR team was having simultaneous heart attacks and celebrations. The board chair wanted an emergency call, but Victoria found herself scanning the crowd for a face she had no reason to expect. Daniel wasn't there, of course. He didn't move in these circles, but she realized, with a sensation both frightening and electric, that she wished he was. The air conditioning in Victoria's office had worked perfectly for 3 years. On Monday morning, she called building maintenance and reported it was making a rattling sound. Daniel arrived 40 minutes later with a toolbox and a knowing look. "Miss Hale," he said, "your AC is fine. Are you sure?" I distinctly heard, "I'm sure." He crossed his arms, but he was smiling slightly. What's really going on? Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks, an unfamiliar sensation. I wanted to say thank you. Properly. Not in a hallway 30 seconds after a crisis. You thanked me very properly at that gala. I watched it online. My daughter Lily made me replay your speech 3 times. You have a daughter? 6 years old. Obsessed with space. Wants to be an astronaut. Something softened in Daniel's expression when he talked about her. She said you were brave for telling the truth in front of all those people. I don't think I've ever been called brave before. Strategic, yes. Ruthless, frequently. But not brave. Maybe Lily sees something the financial analysts miss. Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria called maintenance 7 more times. A flickering light in the conference room. A door that supposedly stuck. The coffee maker making unusual sounds. Each time, Daniel appeared, fixed the non-existent problem in under 5 minutes, and stayed to talk for 20. She learned he'd been a marine engineer, that he'd lost his wife Sarah to cancer 2 years ago, that he'd left military contracting to find work with more stable hours so he could raise Lily alone. He asked about her company, her childhood, whether she'd ever actually taken a vacation. You know, Daniel said on his 8th visit, standing in her office doorway. If you want to talk to me, you could just call and ask. You don't need to invent maintenance emergencies. Victoria looked up from her laptop, caught. Would that be inappropriate? Probably, Daniel said. Then he smiled. But I'd still say yes. That evening, Victoria pulled up the building security footage from the lobby, something she'd never done before. She watched Daniel interact with dozens of people throughout his day. The elderly man from the law firm on 12 who always forgot his key, the cleaning crew that came in after hours, the food delivery workers trying to navigate the service elevators. He treated everyone the same. Patient, present, kind, not special treatment. Just him. Victoria closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of her apartment, feeling something unfamiliar and dangerous taking root in her chest. Victoria was reviewing third-quarter projections in the building lobby. She'd started working down there occasionally, telling herself it was about being more accessible, knowing it was about the possibility of seeing Daniel, when she heard a child's voice echo across the marble. "Daddy, did you know Saturn has 83 moons?" 83. That's more than any other planet. Victoria looked up. Daniel stood near the security desk with a small girl whose dark curls were barely contained by a space-themed headband. She wore a backpack shaped like a rocket and was practically vibrating with excitement. "I did know that, Lil," Daniel said patiently. "You've told me approximately 83 times. But did you know that Titan has lakes made of liquid methane?" "Also yes." The girl noticed Victoria watching and waved enthusiastically. "Hi. Do you work here? Do you like space?" Daniel's eyes widened. "Lily." "That's Victoria," Victoria said, standing and walking over. She extended her hand to the child. "I work on the 42nd floor, and I think space is fascinating." Lily shook her hand solemnly, then lit up. "Want to come get ice cream with us?" Daddy promised after my dental appointment. "I didn't cry at all when they cleaned my teeth, Lily," Daniel said gently. "Miss Hale is probably, I'd love to," Victoria heard herself say. 20 minutes later, they sat in a small ice cream shop in Chelsea, where Lily demolished a cone of cookies and cream while explaining the habitability requirements of Europa's subsurface ocean. Victoria held a scoop of vanilla, her first ice cream in 4 years, and found herself genuinely captivated. "The hard part isn't the radiation," Lily explained seriously. "It's the ice crust. It's like 60 miles thick. How do you get a submarine through 60 miles of ice? Heated drill?" Victoria suggested. "That's what I said. But it would take forever, and you need a power source that lasts decades. Nuclear thermal generators." Lily's eyes went wide. "You know about RTGs? I used to read a lot about space when I was your age." "Used to?" Lily looked genuinely confused by the concept of stopping. Victoria met Daniel's eyes across the small table. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, surprise mixed with something warmer. "I got busy," Victoria said. "Building a company takes a lot of time. But what's the point of building stuff if you forget why you wanted to build it?" Lily asked. In the way children do, cutting straight to questions adults spend decades avoiding. Later, walking back toward the building, Lily skipped ahead to examine a construction crane. Daniel walked beside Victoria in comfortable silence until he said quietly, "I see you." Victoria stopped walking. "What? That's something Sarah used to say. I see you. Not the version of you that you show the world, the actual person underneath, the one who read about space missions and somehow forgot that part of herself." He paused. Kids are good at that. Victoria felt something crack in her chest, like ice breaking up after a long freeze. "I don't know how to live normally," she whispered. "I don't know how to be the person who gets ice cream on a Tuesday afternoon, or remembers what she wanted to be before she became what everyone else needed." "Then maybe," Daniel said gently, "you start small. One ice cream cone at a time." Victoria's driver looked confused when she gave him a Brooklyn address instead of her usual Park Avenue destination. The brownstone neighborhood felt entirely foreign, trees in full October color, children playing on stoops, the smell of someone grilling in a backyard. Daniel's house was narrow and warm, with worn hardwood floors and photographs everywhere. Sarah's face smiled from frames in every room, holding newborn Lily, laughing at a beach, dancing at what must have been their wedding. Victoria felt like an intruder in this shrine to a love story she'd never have. "Don't look so worried," Daniel said, noticing her expression. "We're just making spaghetti carbonara. It's actually hard to mess up if you follow the ratio. I don't cook." "I know. You told me you live on protein shakes and sad desk salads." Lily cried when I told her. "I did not cry," Lily called from the living room, where she was building an elaborate Lego space station. But it was very concerning. Daniel handed Victoria a bowl of eggs. "Beat these with the Parmesan. Not too fast, you don't want them to foam." They moved around the small kitchen in a dance Victoria had never learned. Daniel boiling pasta, Victoria whisking eggs, Lily periodically appearing to steal cherry tomatoes from the salad bowl. When the carbonara was done, they sat at a table barely big enough for three, eating from mismatched plates while Lily explained the physics of rocket staging. "So the first stage burns all its fuel and then falls away," Lily said, using a breadstick to demonstrate. "Then, the second stage lights. Then the third. You keep dropping the heavy, empty parts so you can keep going up." Victoria found herself thinking about all the heavy, empty parts of her own life she'd been carrying, unwilling to let anything fall away. After dinner, Lily gave her a comprehensive tour of her bedroom. The glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, the telescope by the window, the shelf of space books organized by mission date. Then, without warning or preamble, she hugged Victoria tightly around the waist. "I'm glad Daddy has a friend," Lily whispered. "He's been sad for a really long time." When Victoria finally left at 9:30, Daniel walked her to her waiting car. The brownstone glowed behind them, warm and alive in a way her empty penthouse never had been. "Thank you," Victoria said, "for letting me into your home. Thank you for coming. Lily hasn't stopped talking about you since the ice cream shop." Daniel paused, his hand on the car door. "She asked me if you could come to her school's space fair next month." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd ask you, so I'm asking." Victoria thought about her calendar, the color-coded blocks, the strategic priorities. Then she thought about Lily's fierce hug and Daniel's quiet kindness, and the way carbonara tasted when you made it with people who wanted you there. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that very much." The photograph appeared on page 6 3 days later. Victoria and Daniel at the ice cream shop in Chelsea, Lily between them, all three laughing at something off camera. The headline read, "Ice Queen Melts for Maintenance Man Hail Tech CEO Dating Building Employee." By noon, it had spread to every tech news site, financial blog, and gossip platform. The comments section devolved rapidly. "Gold digger spotted. PR stunt for her mental health initiative. What does a billionaire want with a janitor?" Victoria's phone rang continuously. Her communications team wanted an immediate statement. The board chair demanded an emergency call. 3 different PR firms offered their crisis management services. Maya appeared in her office with printouts of increasingly vicious online speculation. "What do you want me to say?" Maya asked carefully. Victoria stared at the photograph. They looked happy, natural, like people who belonged together, regardless of tax brackets or job titles. "Nothing," Victoria said. "We don't comment on my personal life. That's your official position?" Silence. "No." Victoria stood and grabbed her coat. "My official position is that it's none of their business." She found Daniel in the basement mechanical room, performing routine maintenance on the building's HVAC system. He looked up when she entered, his expression unreadable. "You've seen it," Victoria said. "Not a question. Hard to miss. My phone's been ringing since 6 a.m. Reporters. Old Marine buddies who think it's hilarious. My sister sent me 17 texts asking if you're actually my girlfriend or if we should sue for defamation. What did you tell them? Nothing. Because I don't know what we are. Daniel set down his wrench, his voice steady but strained. Are we friends? Are we dating? Are you just a lonely person who's been using me as some kind of emotional experiment? The words hit harder than Victoria expected. Is that what you think? I think, Daniel said carefully, that you live in a world I don't understand, where people keep teams of lawyers on retainer and photographs turn into scandals, where what other people think apparently matters more than what's actually happening. I could release a statement, Victoria offered. Say we're just acquaintances, professional relationship, kill the story. Daniel's jaw tightened. Don't? What? Don't lie about me to protect your reputation. If you want to distance yourself, fine. But don't make me complicit in pretending I don't exist. He met her eyes. I spent 2 years watching Sarah disappear piece by piece, being erased slowly. I won't voluntarily erase myself for anyone. Victoria felt the full weight of what she'd been about to do. Reduce him to nothing to protect her carefully constructed image, the same thing she'd been doing to herself for years. You're right, she said quietly. I'm sorry. I won't issue a statement. Any statement. They can speculate all they want, and the board, the investors, the people who care about Hailtech's image, will have to accept that I'm a person, not a brand. Victoria smiled weakly, though that conversation will be extremely unpleasant. Daniel's expression softened slightly. World's smallest violin for your billionaire problems. Fair. They stood in the mechanical room's fluorescent glare, the building humming around them, while somewhere far above, the internet debated their relationship and journalists crafted narratives from a single photograph. For what it's worth, Victoria said, I don't know what we are either, but I know I want to find out. Daniel considered this, then nodded slowly. Lily would kill me if I said no. She's already planning what space fact she'll teach you next. And you? I stopped being afraid of scary things when I had to watch my wife die, Daniel said simply. Reporters and internet trolls don't even make the top 10. So, yeah, I'm willing. The emergency board meeting convened at 7 a.m. on Monday. Victoria sat at the head of the table in Hailtech's 42nd floor conference room, facing 8 board members whose expressions ranged from concerned to furious. Thomas Brennan, the board chair and an early investor, led the assault. Victoria, we need to address the elephant in the room. This relationship is creating serious concerns about your judgment and the company's public image. My personal life isn't a board matter, Victoria replied calmly. It is when it affects shareholder value, countered Jennifer Moss, representing a major institutional investor. Our stock price dropped 2% on Friday. Investors are questioning your stability, your focus. The narrative is that you're having some kind of breakdown. The narrative is tabloid speculation. My work performance hasn't changed. Actually, it has, Thomas said, pulling out printed calendar reports. You've declined 3 major investor meetings in the past 2 weeks. You left the office at 6 p.m. twice last week. You attended my goddaughter's school event and had dinner with friends, Victoria interrupted. Novel concepts, I know. Don't be flippant. This is serious. You're right. It is serious. Victoria stood, walking to the wall of windows overlooking Manhattan. For 12 years, I've given this company everything. Every waking hour. Every decision. Every piece of myself. I built Hailtech from nothing into a $3 billion enterprise. I've delivered 32 consecutive quarters of growth. I've never missed a deadline, never bungled a negotiation, never let you down. She turned to face them. And now you're telling me that because I've started spending time with another human being, I'm suddenly unreliable? That having a personal life makes me unfit to lead? No one's saying you're unfit, Jennifer said carefully. We're concerned about optics. about the message it sends when our CEO is publicly involved with a building maintenance worker. It raises questions about judgment, about class, Victoria finished. Let's be honest about what we're actually discussing. You'd have no problem if I were dating a CEO or a venture capitalist or someone from our social stratum. The issue is that Daniel Brooks fixes elevators for a living. The room went silent. Thomas cleared his throat. The Singapore partnership is at a critical stage. We need complete focus, complete commitment. Perhaps, once that deal closes— No, Victoria said flatly. Excuse me? No, I'm not putting my life on hold for a business deal. I'm not sacrificing the first genuine connection I've had in years because it's inconvenient for your investor calls. Victoria, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You want me to choose between this company and everything else that makes life worth living. That's not reasonable. That's pathological. Thomas leaned forward, his voice hardening. Then let me be very clear. If you continue this relationship publicly, if you continue to prioritize your personal life over critical business needs, we will be forced to consider whether you're the right person to lead HaleTech forward. Do you understand what I'm saying? Victoria understood perfectly. They were threatening to remove her from the company she'd built. She looked at each board member in turn, seeing the calculations behind their eyes, seeing how easily they'd discard her the moment she stopped being useful, seeing the steel box she'd built for herself, except this time, other people controlled the locks. I understand, Victoria said quietly. Thank you for making your position clear. This meeting is adjourned. She walked out before anyone could respond, her heels clicking against the marble floor with metronomic precision, her expression perfectly controlled. She made it to her office, closed the door, and stood at the window, breathing in fours, trying to remember what Daniel had taught her about staying grounded when everything felt like it was falling apart. The Park Avenue Hotel ballroom glittered with Manhattan's elite 2 weeks later. Victoria had considered skipping the second charity gala, the Mental Health Coalition's annual fundraiser, where she was slated to speak about her commitment to the cause. But she'd made a promise in her first speech, and Victoria Hale kept her promises. She stood backstage in a simple black dress, listening to the opening remarks, watching the crowd through a gap in the curtain. 500 people who'd paid $10,000 per plate, reporters from every major outlet, board members scattered throughout the room, watching her with varying degrees of concern and calculation. And there, near the back, partially hidden behind a marble column, Daniel, wearing a suit that looked borrowed, with Lily beside him in a navy dress covered in embroidered stars. Victoria's heart lurched. She hadn't invited them, hadn't expected them. They didn't belong in this world of $1,000 champagne and strategic philanthropy. But they'd come anyway. The MC announced her name. Victoria walked onto the stage, the spotlight making it impossible to see individual faces. She had prepared remarks about HaleTech's mental health initiatives, about quarterly donation totals, about programs and partnerships and measurable impact. She looked at the teleprompter, looked at the sea of expectant faces, looked at Daniel and Lily standing in the shadows at the back, and she set down her notes. 2 months ago, Victoria began, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. I stood on a stage very similar to this one and told you about a panic attack I had in an elevator. I told you about the man who talked me through it, who stayed with me, who made me realize how isolated I'd become in my pursuit of success. She paused, steadying herself. What I didn't tell you is what happened next. I didn't tell you that I started manufacturing reasons to see him, that I met his daughter and remembered what it felt like to be curious about the universe instead of just quarterly earnings, that I went to his home for dinner and realized I'd built myself a penthouse prison and called it achievement. The crowd had gone completely still. For the past 2 weeks, I've been facing a choice. My board of directors, some of whom are in this room tonight, have made it clear that my relationship with Daniel Brooks is problematic. Not because he's done anything wrong, but because he's a maintenance worker. Because, apparently, caring about someone outside my social class suggests poor judgment. Victoria's hands trembled, but she didn't hide them. They've asked me to choose between the company I built and the life I'm trying to build, between the image of the Ice Queen and the reality of being a person who needs connection, who needs help, who needs other people. She stepped away from the podium, walking to the edge of the stage. So here's my choice. Public. Irrevocable. Witnessed by everyone in this room and everyone who'll see the clips tomorrow. Victoria looked directly at Daniel, seeing his surprised face in the crowd, seeing Lily clutching his hand. I don't have a husband. I don't have a conventional relationship that fits neatly into your expectations. What I have is a man who saw me at my most vulnerable and didn't turn away, who welcomed me into his home and his life without asking for anything in return, who taught his 6-year-old daughter that kindness matters more than status. Her voice broke slightly, then steadied. Daniel Brooks, would you consider going on a date with me tonight? A real one. Not manufactured maintenance calls or chance meetings. An actual date. With witnesses. On the record. Consequences be damned. The ballroom erupted. Cameras flashed. People surged to their feet. Victoria couldn't tell if they were applauding or gasping in shock, but she didn't care. She walked down the stage steps, through the crowd that parted around her, until she stood in front of Daniel. Up close, she could see the shock on his face. The calculation. The moment he understood what she'd just done, chosen him publicly, irrevocably, in a way that would reshape her entire life. You're insane, he whispered. Probably, Victoria agreed. Is that a yes? Daniel looked at Lily, who was practically vibrating with excitement. Looked at Victoria, standing in her ballroom before 500 witnesses, offering everything. Yeah, he said, taking her hand. Lily let out a shriek of joy that echoed across the stunned ballroom. The next morning's headlines were spectacular. Tech CEO chooses love overboard. Victoria Hale's public declaration stuns Manhattan elite. Ice Queen melts completely. Victoria sat at Daniel's small kitchen table, wearing one of his old Marines t-shirts, drinking coffee that was definitely not black, watching those headlines scroll across her tablet, while Lily explained the differences between terrestrial and Jovian planets. So Earth is rocky because we're close to the sun, Lily said, using breakfast pastries to demonstrate. But Jupiter is mostly gas because it formed farther out where it was cold enough for hydrogen to stick together. That makes sense, Victoria said, genuinely interested. Her phone had been ringing constantly since last night. The board wanted an emergency meeting. 3 board members had already resigned. Her PR team had sent 47 messages, ranging from congratulations to resignation letters. Thomas Brennan had left a voicemail that was 30% anger, 70% grudging respect. But there were other messages too. Emails from employees she'd never met, saying her speech made them feel less alone. Notes from strangers sharing their own stories of choosing authentic connection over professional image. An offer from a rival tech company to discuss leadership opportunities that value whole human beings. Victoria set down her phone and looked around Daniel's kitchen. Morning sunlight streamed through the window above the sink. Lily's school artwork covered the refrigerator. A photograph of Sarah smiled from the counter. Not haunting, but present. A reminder that love was worth the risk of loss. What are you thinking? Daniel asked, refilling her coffee. That I have no idea what happens next, Victoria admitted. I might lose my company. Probably lose board seats, definitely lose some investor confidence. Regrets? Victoria considered this honestly. She thought about the penthouse she'd slept in for the first time in 2 weeks, empty and echoing. Thought about the calendar that had controlled her life, the 15-minute blocks, the color-coded priorities. Thought about the woman who'd stepped into an elevator alone, trapped in a steel box of her own design. No, she said. No regrets. Lily looked up from her pastry planets. Are you going to live with us now? Lily Daniel started. I'm just asking. Because if Victoria lives here, We could turn the spare room into a library, and she could read me space books before bed, and we could make carbonara every Friday. Victoria met Daniel's eyes across the table. They hadn't discussed future, hadn't talked about what this actually meant beyond last night's public declaration. But Lily's guileless question hung in the air, asking the thing adults were too careful to say out loud. I think, Victoria said slowly, we take this one step at a time. But maybe, eventually, if your dad wants, I want, Daniel interrupted quietly. And better coffee, Victoria added. Hey, my coffee is fine. Your coffee is categorically not fine. I have standards. Lily giggled, delighted by the normality of their bickering. Later that afternoon, Victoria stood outside Haletech Tower, looking up at the 50 floors of steel and glass she'd built. Her private elevator was somewhere inside, running smoothly now, doors opening and closing on schedule, carrying people to their destinations. But Victoria walked instead to the public entrance, where Daniel was replacing a faulty light fixture in the main lobby. She waited until he finished, then took his hand. Want to show me the mechanical room you were working in that day? She asked. The one where you told me you wouldn't let me erase you? Romantic, Daniel said dryly, but he was smiling. They took the service elevator down. Victoria didn't flinch to the basement level, where the building's mechanical systems hummed and thrummed. Daniel showed her the HVAC controls, the electrical panels, the complex network of systems that kept everything running. This is what I do, he said. Not glamorous, but it matters. Buildings don't run themselves. Neither do companies, Victoria replied. Or lives. I'm starting to think the important work happens in the hidden spaces, the mechanical rooms and quiet conversations and moments no one sees. Deep thoughts from the Ice Queen. Former Ice Queen. I think I got demoted. Promoted, Daniel corrected, pulling her close. Definitely promoted. Above them, Victoria's phone buzzed with another urgent message from her board. Below them, the building's massive generators maintained their steady rhythm. Around them, pipes and ducts and cables carried the invisible systems that made modern life possible. And between them, in the fluorescent-lit mechanical room where no one would think to look for Manhattan's most famous CEO, Victoria Hale kissed Daniel Brooks like someone who'd finally figured out which systems actually mattered. The elevator doors, all of them, the private ones and public ones, the ones that went up and the ones that went down, stood open, and Victoria, for the first time in longer than she could remember, wasn't afraid of where they might lead.